Have you ever been making a recipe, combining your ingredients, going along, but all of a sudden you get down to butter and it specifies either salted or unsalted butter. And all of a sudden you're thinking, crap, what type of butter do I even have in my refrigerator? And is it okay if I substitute one of these for the other? That's what we're talking about today. Salted versus unsalted butter. What's even the difference? Alright, as the name implies, salted butter has a small amount of salt added to it. Typically, for most brands, this is about 90 milligrams of salt per tablespoon of butter. And then compare that to unsalted butter. Obviously, there's no salt included in this butter, so it's simply a combination of cream, from milk from the cow. You would have some water and milk solids. Milk solids are just things like protein, a little bit of sugar, vitamins, and minerals that are naturally found in milk, and therefore cream. So salted butter, because of the salt, obviously will lend more of not only a buttery but also saltiness to the food. But there's also one other big benefit of salted butter, and that's that it has a really long shelf life because the salt acts as a preservative. So salt helps preserve our food, which means salted butter can actually last for months and months in your refrigerator versus the unsalted kind, which will tend to go bad or spoil faster. Unsalted butter is super great because it gives you complete control over your recipe, because you simply measure out how much butter you need, and later you measure out the exact amount of salt you want to add, or just simply salt to the taste you like. And sticking to unsalted butter, when a recipe calls for unsalted butter, especially for anything that really relies on sort of a buttery flavor, you really want to make sure you don't use salted butter. Use unsalted butter for things like pound cakes and butter cookies especially, because even a small amount of salt can sort of overpower and cover up that sweet, creamy flavor the butter can lend food. So for anything that really needs sort of that buttery, sweet creaminess to come through, you want to make sure you use unsalted butter. Now, you might be wondering, well, what would we even need salted butter for? But it actually does have a couple of really good uses. And salted butter is just really quick in a pinch to have with toast or, butter a baguette, or sort of top a veggie dish or your fish or some other main dish you may have made, because that combination of the butteriness and the salt really rounds out basically any type of dish. And this is because salt is known for enhancing the natural flavors in the food. So salt sort of helps bring out flavors in different dishes you may have made, which makes salted butter sort of take something that is sort of bland and boring and make it into a super flavorful food. The biggest question is, can you substitute salted butter for unsalted or vice versa? The short answer is yes, you generally can, as long as you're not super picky about the amount of salt in your food, or you're not really attuned to different saltiness levels. You probably won't really pick up a difference. The only tip I would really recommend is if you're substituting a recipe that calls for unsalted butter and you only have salted butter, maybe just don't add any other salt the recipe calls for. You can just simply count the salt that's in the butter as the salt for the recipe, or at the very least add less salt to make sure you're not making anything super salty by substituting unsalted for salted butter. I know it might seem pretty glamorous to have two types of butter in your refrigerator, but they really do have different purposes. So salted butter is better for sort of spreading on foods or topping, a dish you made for dinner, because the salt, that small amount of salt really brings out other flavors in the food. On the other hand, unsalted butter is better if you often cook from scratch or do a lot of baking, because it does give you complete control over the recipe. Well, that's about all for today, so I'll talk to you next time. Hey everyone, thank you for watching. If you have any questions about the foods you eat, leave them in the comments section. I'm always looking for new ideas for videos. See you later.